Sheikh, you're claiming that the relationship with God is actually something I should be interested in, that's what we're going to be talking about. So the idea I'm trying to talk about tonight is that worshiping God is not something that we should look at because others have told us, or it's a duty, or we'll get punished. No. Actually, a true relationship can start when you are there for the person themselves, right? Imagine if you told your wife or your husband or your partner or your sister or your brother or your best friend, I'm here with you, I spend time with you, because if I don't, for example, dad would be upset with me. How would your friend feel, right? But unfortunately, that's how we're treating God. God, I'm here to worship you, because if you don't, well, you'll get upset, or something will happen, or mom would get upset, or no. We have to be there, start a relationship with God out of love, out of true interest. But the problem is that it is not in our hand to create this interest. We need to learn how to develop this, right? You can't just start loving someone, right? Even sometimes, for example, you see between two people who've been married for 10 years, the love is gone. They want to love each other, but they can't. They're like, I'm so sorry. I just feel like I don't love you anymore. I wish I did, but I don't. So love is not something which is easy to create on its own. And of course, by the way, if you're that couple, there are things you can do, right? Don't despair. But I'm saying that it needs attention. The same is true with God, right? The same is true with God. And so today, I want to talk about this. Try to maybe give you an idea of why a relationship with God may be of interest to you. And I want to start by saying this, that a relationship with God is actually a relationship with yourself. What? With myself? Yes. If you were watching our previous live session, we talked about this quite a bit, right? But for those who haven't, I'll try to give a little bit of maybe summary of that session so what I'm saying makes sense. See, a lot of us, we have parts of ourself which are hidden to us, right? There are parts of us which are hidden to us. Let me give you an example which would make this make sense, right? Hasn't it happened to you that suddenly you smell a perfume and it takes you back to a memory, right? Suddenly you remember, for example, a cousin or a friend, right? And you feel very clearly that moment where you smelt this perfume, for example, from your friend or your cousin. Now, normally you would go in your life and that memory was not there. You wouldn't remember your cousin the whole day. It only took a perfume, or sometimes it could be a nasheed or a song. You listen to it and it suddenly reminds you of something. Okay, where was that memory? Wasn't it part of your life? It was, but you didn't have access to it, right? So memories are one of the things which are part of who we are, but we don't always have access to them. It's as if they are here underneath our awareness. And sometimes something triggers it and it comes up, right? So for example, the memory of the perfume your friend used, something outside triggered it, it came up. Or for example, you went to grandma's house again and suddenly so many memories from your childhood came up, right? Those memories from childhood are actually very important to who you are. They were your formative years. They're part of your personality, part of who you are, but you don't have access to them now. It took something from outside to trigger them and they came up, right? So this is what I mean by the idea that there are parts of us that we don't have access to, that are hidden to us normally. Now, what are the kind of things which are there and why is this important? I'll talk first about what are the kind of things which are there, which are hidden from me, and then I'll say why is it important for me or for you to know that there are parts of you which you don't have access to. Well, for starters, isn't it bad not to know yourself fully? Aren't all of us trying to find our authentic self? But if all of these sound like cliches, I'll try to convince you even more. Okay, what are some of the other things which we keep here? You were saying some of these are memories. Okay, well, everything in life which happened and it really hurt you to the extent that you couldn't deal with it and you pushed it away, it all goes here to this hidden level where you usually don't have access to, right? For example, you were 2 years old, or you were 6 years old, or you were 8 years old, maybe even you were at school. Someone bullied you, someone said something about your weight, or someone said something about your nose looks this way, oh, and everyone laughed. And as an 8-year-old, you couldn't deal with it, so you pushed it out of your awareness. Where did it go? It went here, to this hidden layer, right? Okay, if I manage to push it down there, if I don't feel it anymore, what's wrong with it? Didn't I succeed? Well, the thing is, you managed to push it down, but it's still in you. And because it's still in you, it still has impact on you. How? This can communicate with who you are, with your experience, through two ways. The hidden part of who we are can communicate with the part which is not hidden in two ways. One is to send thoughts, the other one is to send emotions. To send thoughts or emotions. And that is how the things you've pushed down communicate with you. So you may think that, okay, I pushed it down, I'm over it, but no, it still comes and overtakes your life. How so? You're watching a movie, right? You're so excited. For example, you're going out with your partner or with friends. You go out and you're watching a movie, right? Suddenly, a scene comes in the movie where a friend breaks the heart of a friend, lets them go, right? Out of nowhere, breaks the heart. And this, you had a memory. Maybe you were 15 years old and your best friend suddenly, without telling anything to you, without explaining, started becoming friends with another person and totally ghosted you. Now, seeing this movie triggers that memory, maybe after 10 years, maybe after 15 years, and this creates negative emotions. You don't even remember the memory, but you feel bad, right? It may even send thoughts. What kind of thoughts? Any thoughts which would stop you remembering it. Like, oh, maybe I should go out of the cinema. You know, so you may even tell your friend, oh, this is not even a good movie. Should we go out of the cinema? Should we do something else? Should we go, for example, to a restaurant, right? So you thought you pushed it down, but it came back after 15 years, after 10 years, and not just it came back, it takes over and it changes your life, right? You were so excited to go to the movies. You bought the ticket. You thought you're going to have a fun night, maybe relax a little bit, get your mind off the work, and suddenly one thing from 15 years ago makes you feel terrible about the experience and makes you say, I want to go, right? Even if you're shy to tell your friends that I want to go, you'll probably take your phone out and start going on Instagram, right? So this is how you are under the control of the hidden part of you. It made you stop watching the movie and going on your phone. Or it could be another thing, right? Maybe a person has, I don't know, insecurities about their height. I'm not tall enough. And they go to a party or they go to a friend's house, and suddenly they start talking about, maybe they have, for example, I don't know, a younger brother, and says, you know what, I wish when I get older I become this height. Or maybe they watch a movie and the actor is tall and it reminds them of the fact that they're not tall, and suddenly out of nowhere they want to leave that room. I know that this is not fun, and you may not even realize that this is linked to that insecurity. It just sends a negative emotion. It just doesn't feel right. It's not a fun night anyway. Maybe let's go home. So you can see how the hidden parts of us, the hidden part, sends things up. And it's not just that it's a thought or an emotion. These things actually take control of our life. And it's not just bad things. It could be good things as well. For example, maybe you had a good memory in your uncle's house. You're playing with cousins, maybe back in a different country, and it was so nice, right? And now you've forgotten about it. That was 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Now you're going to buy a house, for example, or rent a house. And suddenly there's this kitchen here. There's just in a way which reminds your hidden part of a memory you had with your cousins in your uncle's house. It sends a very good energy, right? It likes it, sends positive emotion, right? You don't know where this comes from. You just feel good. And you tell, for example, your wife or your husband, oh, this house feels right. Let's buy it, right? It may even be above your budget, but you force yourself to buy it or rent it. We really need to come here. I felt right here. You didn't even know what's the reason. The reason was that for 1 second, it just reminded you of a good memory. And then you rent it, you go there, and that positive emotion, that nice energy stops coming. And you're like, what happened? We used to feel really good here. Yes, but it got boring, right? It was there for a few weeks. It reminded you of a good memory. It sent positive energy. But you misinterpreted that. You felt like this is what your authentic self wants. This is what truly can give you pleasure. But it wasn't. It was just a nice energy. Misinterpreted it, made a decision, right? And we actually act this way. And a lot of the times, a lot of the decisions we make are actually done because of the emotions that this sends, or the thoughts that come from the hidden part of ourselves. Things we buy, the things we try to avoid. And slowly what happens is that as we build up more and more of these, we actually start limiting our life, right? Because you know how you decide where to go, which friends to go to their house, which friends to talk to? Well, the ones that when you are with them, negative energy doesn't come from below. So if you're with a friend and, for example, they say something which triggers something in your hidden part, you get a negative energy, and instead of dealing with it, you may feel like, you know what, this is not even a good friend. I don't feel good next to them. You don't know that this has nothing to do with your friend. If you want to fix this, it's not to let go of your friend. It's to go down and deal with that thing which you've kept there. But because you don't know this, you may end that friendship. So slowly, you limit your life. You limit your friends to what your hidden part likes. And your hidden part is not the best of you. The hidden part here is where all your wounds are kept, right? All the bad memories, all the time you were hurt, all the time you felt insecure. That's where you've kept here. So if you let this to choose your friends for you, to choose who you want to be with, to choose when you want to feel in love with your husband or with your wife or not, then slowly you will see that your life becomes narrower and narrower, less friends, less meetings you feel nice in, less movies you can enjoy, less and less till you satisfy this. And it would never be satisfied, right? And it never actually lets go. You could even be, for example, lying down lying down on your bed, trying to sleep, but it keeps sending thoughts. You know the thoughts that you have when you're trying to sleep, but like maybe sometimes 1 hour in the bed and it doesn't allow you to sleep. Where does it come from? From here, right? And you start maybe fantasizing. You know what? If only, for example, this happened and that happened, how amazing would it be? Or maybe you had an argument. You pushed the argument down, right? You had an argument with a brother or with a sister or with a friend. You pushed it down and then it stayed there. During the day you were busy, it kept sending emotions, but you didn't pay attention because there were so many other things happening here. You were watching a movie, you were having a iftar, you were having sahari. But at night, when you're trying to sleep, there's not much happening around you, so these become strong. It sends a thought, right? Oh, you know what? My sister said this today. Why did she say this? Why did she say this? I should have said this. I should have done that. This, that. 1 hour, half an hour, right? So now, what I've been trying to do so far is to say that parts of us is hidden to us. And also, it's very important for us to know this. Because if we don't know this, then these things, these parts which are hidden to us will take control of our life. And they will make decisions for us. Let me just take a moment of break. I'll have my water and inshallah we can continue. And then I'll try to link this to God. What does all of this have to do with God? If you also want to go bring yourself tea or something, please feel free to do so. I'll try to have some water and we can continue. Is it rude that I'm having water? Don't push this down in your hidden part, by the way. I don't mean to offend you. I'm sorry, I'm just thirsty, you know. It's that's actually one of the most important things to realize, that 99% of the cases no one tries to offend us, right? We get offended, but 99% of the cases it's not that they have something against you or against me personally. Maybe they just have a shortcoming, right? Maybe they just haven't had the time to learn something or to deal with something, right? It's just a shortcoming on their part they're dealing with, but it happens next to you. So you think they're offending you personally, right? A lot of the times that's what happens, and it's good for partners to know as well. Usually your partner doesn't try to offend you personally. It's just the way they are, I'm just thirsty. Okay, now, how is this relevant to God? Well, there are two ways we can talk about this. I try to maybe use both. One thing is this, that when we are not aware of these two layers, our whole life becomes a mission to satisfy them without us even knowing. Everything we do, or at least most of the things we do in our life, our whole energy is then spent to satisfy these. Now you may be saying, Sheikh, you just said I don't even know they're not here. So how can I spend most of my energy satisfying them? Well, you know how. It is true that you don't know they are there, but you still feel the energy and the thoughts, right? The thought comes. For example, something happens and negative emotion comes. So what do? You say, so I have to design the world around me, my life, the people around me, my career, everything I do in a way that it doesn't trigger the things here, right? So if, for example, I have an issue with someone, the way to be happy is to let them out, right? So my whole life becomes a way for me to make sure the negative energy from these things don't come up. So it becomes a difficult task of trying to avoid anything that could trigger things in me, right? Maybe I am, for example, maybe one time my friends left me when I was in school. I felt a little bit abandoned, right? So my whole life becomes about I have to feel that people around me love me. So even when I'm in a relationship, I need to make sure everything is in a way that that insecurity is not triggered, right? The smallest thing my partner shows and it triggers that part of me, I get grumpy. You know what? Don't do that to me again. Don't talk to me like that. Don't do this. So you start designing all of your life in a way to avoid these being triggered. The career we choose sometimes, the path we have, right? Maybe, for example, you had an issue with your neighbor, right? Maybe one day, for example, the neighbors were listening to music, it was loud and it didn't let you sleep. That annoyed you. And you're like, you know what? I have to buy a detached house. I have to. If I want to be happy, I have to have a detached house. Right? Because once the neighbor annoyed me and I want to live in a place where the neighbor's wall is not next to mine. Right? So our whole life becomes a way to deal with this. Or maybe you had a friend who died of an illness, God forbid, but it happens. Or maybe you had a friend who went through a very difficult illness and they needed to spend a lot. So that fear is in you, the fear that I may get ill and I may not have enough money. So how do you, so it never rests you. It never allows you to have peace, right? So your whole life becomes about this idea that I have to become so rich that no matter what kind of medical bill I get, I can afford it, right? Now, I don't know what example would relate to you. You think of the ones, right? The things that you do to try to take control of life. If for example, right now the people around me are this way, then let me show them. I'll become this way. I'll do that. I'll gain this. And then, so a lot of the energy we have is spent to change the world to make sure it doesn't trigger the things down there. But the question is this. First of all, would it work? Or would there always be more things? Well, I'm going to leave the answer to you. And secondly, are these the kind of things that you want to be designing your life for you? What is here? The insecurities, the hurt, the wounds. So if you want to design a life in which they're not triggered, you're basically giving the bad thing about yourself, the things you didn't like them so much that you push them down, you're allowing them to be the architect of your life. All the energy of a human being, of a life, of a ruh, of a beautiful soul is spent to make sure that he creates a life in which he doesn't have to think about, for example, his insecurities. About, for example, the time that someone bullied him. Or about, for example, the idea that there's part of their body they're ashamed of. Their whole life becomes obsessed with this. And is this a good way to live? Is this a good way to... And all of these are the answers you have to give. No one should be able to force you. No one. You should answer this for yourself. Do you want to live based on your insecurities, based on your bad memories, based on previous wounds, based on the trauma? Or do you want to actually be in charge of your life? So, now, once you decide that, okay, I don't want to design my life, the external world, in a way that it would stop triggering this, so what else can I do? The answer is that you can go and deal with these things that you have in the hidden part of yourself and one by one heal them, right? One by one heal them. Now, let me in brackets also talk about love, because some people were asking questions about it from last week. We talked a little bit about love. Why is it that sometimes we fall in love? I'm not saying this is the only reason, but this is one of the reasons. Why is it that sometimes we're with a friend and we suddenly feel so close? Again, I'm not saying this is the only reason, but in a lot of the cases, this is the reason. You're with a person and suddenly you feel so close to you, get such an amazing energy with them, right? Or you're with, or you, for example, the first time you fell in love with your partner, right? What happens then? Well, the thing is, this person or your partner, their personality, their manners was in a way that out of all the people, out of all the possibilities, their personalities was in a way that it didn't trigger anything here, right? They didn't speak in a way that would remind you of a bad memory. They didn't, even their looks wasn't in a way that would remind you of a person you have bad memory with, right? Even the kind of face we find attractive, it's all because of what's here. It's all because of what's here. If a person broke your heart, or if a person was nice to you, or if you had a crush on someone, you have kept all of it here. And these even define the kind of face you get attracted to, or the kind of face you don't like. Hasn't it happened to you that, for example, maybe someone's looking for a partner, and then you're trying to imagine, okay, what kind of person they would be attracted to, but then they suddenly go and start a relationship with someone you wouldn't even imagine, like, oh, I never thought you would be attracted to them. You know why? Because you're not in their mind. You don't know what kind of things they've kept there. The reason they're attracted to this face is because of all the things they've kept there. Maybe they saw someone die, I don't know, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It could be so many different things, but it's all because of here. Now, let's go back to what we were talking about. When you're with a friend or with someone that suddenly everything feels right and you may feel so much positive energy, is because out of all the possibilities, this person is in a way which doesn't trigger anything here, doesn't trigger any insecurity, any wound, any bad memory. And so none of these send bad energy. None of these send negative thought. They're all silent because this person, luckily, is in a way that doesn't trigger anything. And so after a long time in your life where you kept being triggered by so many things, there's silence from here. No negative energy, no negative thought, and you feel so much energy, right? You feel so much energy next to them. But the problem is that how long do you think a person can be with you before triggering something inside you? Right? Haven't you heard that line that says, to join someone is the death of love, right? Of course, it's not completely true, but it has some truth in it. What is the truth? When two people who love each other finally are together, they have more time with each other, and the chances that finally she or he would act in a way or say something or do something that would trigger something here becomes higher and higher. So maybe after 3 months, finally he says something, triggers something here, and negative emotion comes, and you're shocked. What happened to our love? Are we having an argument? Why am I feeling negative with this person? And you can't even understand it, right? So that's why a lot of people also, for example, may not know how to handle with the relationship. Right? Instead of saying, okay, this just meant that something in me was triggered. Let me go and fix that. Let me go and heal that. No big deal. They think that the problem is with this friend. Let me replace this friend. Or maybe my marriage is not what it used to be. Right? Do you know how many people tell the new couples that enjoy the first year? It's only the first year which is nice. Why? Because the first year the person hasn't had enough time to trigger things here. But as you go, people have so many things here, they keep triggering each other, right? Maybe he says something which brings back the memory. Oh, you said that about my mother? Oh, this, oh, that. Oh, this is the way you brush your teeth. It reminds me of the way that my uncle used to brush his teeth, and I didn't like that, right? So all of these can happen and trigger.